What are the options available to Nicola Sturgeon when it comes to free testing?
Well, I think it's important to recognise that free testing is an important part of our armoury. I think all the governments across the United Kingdom recognise that we're going to have to live with COVID, and it's how we do that. Um, we have to remember when we look at the ONS data that there is still a relatively high level of COVID circulating in our communities. We're talking about 1 in 20 people that still have the virus. And I think it's important that people have that access to testing so they know if they're carrying the virus, so they know that they can take any necessary protections that they need to do to protect themselves, to make sure that they're not inadvertently spreading the virus elsewhere.
Mm.
One of the issues that was discussed yesterday in the House of Commons was what access would medical professionals have to testing, for example. The government's got to take its responsibility to keep people safe.
Mm.
We don't want a situation where people are a threat to others. And let's not forget, whilst we've made enormous progress over the course of the last year with the vaccination programme, amongst other things,
Mm.
but we aren't through with this yet. And it's necessary that all the nations of the United Kingdom have the ability to have this protection of testing. And as me, one of the things that's happened over the course of the last 2 years is that testing has been done on a UK-wide basis. It's a UK-wide programme. And if the government in Edinburgh, in Cardiff and in Belfast want to continue with testing, it's important that the UK government recognises that the devolved nations, on the basis of best practice in public health, have the option of doing this. And let's not forget, what we saw yesterday was the Prime Minister not acting on the basis of health advice. We know that the World Health Organization have made very critical comments about what Boris Johnson and his government are doing. This has been about saving the skin of the Prime Minister. And
Well,
we need to
okay.
recognise the importance of
Many,
best practice
yeah.
in public health.
I thought you were going to say saving money because some people will say it's also about saving money, which, there's not a lot of it to go around. And there are many, many things we need to be spending money on right now. We're led to believe that £2 billion a month was being spent on testing and the testing infrastructure. And there will be some people who will say, well, that's not sustainable. We need to spend that money on other things. Now, if Scotland decides that they want to continue with free testing, Boris Johnson has said that you'll have to find that from your own budget. Do you know how much that would be?
Well, the figure that's been bandied around, that two billion figure is, of course, the figure for January. There was a tremendous campaign and effort to make sure that people had access to free test kits in January. As I think we move through this, I would
Mm.
expect to see that the desire for test kits will naturally fall anyway. So I wouldn't say that that 2 billion figure is the baseline figure, but here is the rub. The budget of the Scottish Government is capped. We don't have the ability to borrow large sums of money. And the government in the UK made it clear that it would do what was necessary in order to get the United Kingdom through the pandemic. So they're saying that we have the responsibility of doing this, but actually we don't have the access to funding which is required. What this really does is show the limitations of devolution. And if I may say so, we've got the situation that Boris Johnson has done this, and he's done this without any consultation with any of the devolved governments. The respect agenda seems to have completely gone out of the window, and it simply isn't good enough.
Okay. Ian, do you know, Ian Blackford? Do you know what that figure might be though? How much you? I know you're saying you probably can't find the money because the budget's capped, but you must have an idea of how much free testing would cost in Scotland if you were to
Well,
continue
we know
with
we
it.
know what the costs have been when we look in the rear view mirror, and,
Mm.
and and of course the Scottish Government will look at the options that it has available, and the First Minister will make a statement to the Scottish Parliament this afternoon of where we stand.
Yeah.
And we can look at what we can do. But this is the UK government walking away from its obligations, and if I may say so, it kind of makes the point that if we want the freedom to do these things, if we want to do it on the basis where we have control of our budget, then the only way ultimately that we can do that is if Scotland is an independent country. So Boris Johnson is pushing us to a situation that debate about our constitutional future is going to have to take place on the basis of the UK government not providing the support that it's been necessary to do so up until now.
I want to. I mean, those are huge issues, and you're perfectly within your rights to raise them. I'm quite interested, really, about the kind of the everyday stuff and what kind of discussions you are having about what's going to happen. Not post COVID, but living with COVID. So Boris Johnson has decided that for example, the legal requirement to isolate is going to end on Thursday. What's your feeling about that? What's your feeling about guidance on working from home?
Well, I think it's important that people do isolate if they have COVID, because I think everyone has a responsibility to make sure that they're not passing the virus on. And to see the government to walk away from its responsibilities to push that obligation onto the public is simply not right. In Scotland, we have the situation at the moment that where people can work from home, that they should be able to do that. Of course, we are seeing a return to work. We're seeing a hybrid model. We're beginning to see, rightly, the country opening up. But it's about making sure that we do that in a balanced way, that we make sure that we can live with COVID, that we do get out of this. And that's exactly the issues that the First Minister will address this afternoon.
And what about face coverings? We were having a discussion yesterday about what we do now, and I was saying that where I don't need to wear a mask, I don't, and where I do currently, for example, on public transport in London, where it's
Mm.
covered by a bylaw, I do. And some people were saying, well, hang on a second, what about people who are vulnerable, who are walking around? You know, you're not protecting them from you. What is your feeling about what should happen in Scotland, which has always been a bit stricter on face coverings? I mean, I notice it whenever I go home. What's your feeling on what should happen now with face coverings in Scotland?
I think I think the way that you express it's really quite important, Asmir, because people have accepted that all of us have a responsibility to protect others, and that's
Mm.
what you're talking about not making sure that we're inadvertently passing the virus. And so you've seen that in public transport, you see it in shops in Scotland. I think in general people are very accepting of it. And what we've had over the course of the pandemic in general is we've had very effective and consistent communication. If people understand what's expected of them and recognise it's a small price to pay to wear a mask in a public place where you could inadvertently be passing on the virus, why wouldn't you do that?